like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:17. Tom Barney.
Here.
And Ray Borden is absent, excused. And it looks like I have Sarah. Are you appointing someone or are you taking it?
I'm standing in.
You're standing in, okay. All right. Agenda revisions and approval.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Hey, any chance we could get a little white light, just a little bit on the tables here? Thank you. The blue lights are kind of cool, but it's not lighting up my notes that well. Okay, item 4, approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2021.
Move to approve the February 22nd minutes.
Second.
Motion by Sarah, second by Tom. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Item 5, consent review and discuss March vouchers.
We got a few, I don't know if I'm on. Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. I received a few questions regarding the March vouchers, so I'll just go through them, and if we have additional questions or discussion, feel free to stop me or at the end of it.
Okay.
Or at the end of them, I can answer questions. One of the questions regarding some credit card charges. It was for multiple charges regarding hotel stays, food. It was all for fundraising money, so it was no district dollars. It was a boys swim fundraising and a weightlifting fundraising, paid for all of the expenses on there, so they weren't district funds. The second one I got a question on was regarding MindWise, which is a suicide prevention services. One of our teachers at the middle school, 8th grade teacher, teaches, I believe they're a counselor that teaches 8th graders annually. So this is an annual $300 fee for this, and she uses this program when she is educating the 8th graders on suicide prevention. I have a couple questions regarding some leases. So one of them was a 2015 van. That is a special needs van. It was renewed for an extension of a lease, so it's up in 2021 in October. So in October we can review that again. So it did have a lease and then they extended it. So it was up in October of 19 and then they renewed it till 2021. I'll come to the other questions on leases in just a moment. One of the other questions was regarding internet for our stadium. This was a total of $1,500. It was to allow us to live stream our football games. It was in fall, and for some reason we didn't get the invoice until now, so it wasn't anything current. We just paid the invoice now. Finally, on this question list, environmental consultants, or EMC. I spoke to Don Erickson in our Buildings and Grounds Department to make sure he was aware of this purchase. We pay this semi-annually, so twice a year, so this is for 6 months of service. They do a walkthrough of our asbestos, and they make sure that nothing has changed from the 6 months prior. And then there was also a fee semi-annually for the $1,000. It's for environmental health and safety fee. It's resources for our maintenance department regarding safety measures that they have to take throughout the school. So it's about $2,700 every 6 months. But he's aware of both of those. The other question regarding the fees, the leases, we had all our leases coming through. These are all monthly leases. So just for reference, we have 2 special needs vans, and both of those come out of our flow-through dollars, so those are grant funded. If we would like to share them with other students in the district, we'd have to prorate how much would come out of the flow-through and how much would come out of the general fund, and we can do that. We just have to look at the capacity of the vans, because usually the front of the van is handicap space, and then the back of the van usually has a couple seats in it, so that's might be a reason why they're separated. We have 2 more vans. One is for the graduation center and one is for the activities or athletics office. When we looked through the log sheets of those, because all the equipment is logged in and out so you can see when they're being used, we went back 2 years to look at the log sheets for the graduation center van and the activities office van, and we're going to monitor those. The lease just did get renewed for both of the vans in 2020, so they will be out for, I believe, 60 months, so 5 years. But I wrote a note on the lease to track the mileage on those to see if for some reason those could be combined at that point, but we'll keep watching those. We have 3 vehicles of the Buildings and Grounds Department. 2 of them are taller vans, and one of them is a pickup truck that we use for plowing. Those leases are coming due. The current ones that we're on are coming due, and they're going to be renewed for, well, these are done on April 1st, but the new vans aren't available for a period of time because they're new and they're not out yet. So we will do a lease to gap to make sure there is a gap filled in there. Those vans and truck are used constantly, so those we're not able to share. And then finally, the food service truck, that is used on a daily basis, and it's more of like a box truck, just so we have reference of all the vehicles that we lease. So we'll continue to look at the 2, but the other ones are pretty much used on a daily basis throughout the day. Are there any further questions on leases?
No, that answers what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. And then one of the questions that I had was regarding monthly subscriptions from our tech department that were on Mark Gabriziak's credit card. They did move to my credit card, so they will stay on my credit card until we move forward with a permanent position there. So I believe Zoom is on mine, MailChimp might be on my credit card, and there's one other one. So we aren't missing any subscriptions, so they won't lapse. And I believe those are all my questions, but if you have additional ones, I would be happy to look into them. No?
Okay. Thank you, Brittany. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to consent to payment of vouchers as presented and reviewed.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tom, second by Sarah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Item 6, new business monthly purchases exceeding $15,000. There were none. And unfinished business, discussion with appropriate action, 2021-2022 budget and ESSER/CARES funding update. And it is defined in the write-up. Thank you.
You're welcome. It took up most of my write-up to write those out.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a quick update on where we're at with the 2021-22 budget. As you know, it's a biennial budget, so we have to sit and wait until the state knows what they are doing. So the process is the Department of Public Instruction creates a document that they then submit to the government saying this is what we think educational funding should look like for the next 2 years. The government takes those into consideration when he is drafting his budget, and then he moves his budget onto the Joint Finance Committee, and then they're the ones that develop the budget. So DPI created their budget, gave it to the governor. The governor says, no, I don't like it. He actually increased everything that the Department of Public Instruction wanted, then gave it to the state. The state says, no, they can either take some of his suggestions or they can start from scratch. They decided to start from scratch and didn't like his. So Usually they take parts of each one of those to like move the process forward. Instead, they're saying, no, we're going to start all over. So we have a feeling that the process is going to be prolonged. Hopefully we'll know by like May, if not June, before we have to actually set our budget in October. But we are still going through the processes that we're going through internally. If I did take into account everything that the governor was asking for, we still have a large gap, but we are still working forward to finding solutions for the large gap. For the next couple of months, we will be coming to the committee and the boards with those solutions to see if they can move forward or not move forward. I'm hoping that I will have more detail on the budget in April and May, more detail like where the dollars are coming from, but they have to come to committees first. And then I'm hoping to come to the board in June. We should always set our budget in June. Our preliminary budget should be set in June because we should not be able to start spending in July unless we have an approved preliminary budget. So we'll be approving that in June. September, we have our September count, so that is after the June budget is set. The September numbers come in, which then could change the budget again because all our revenue is based on our student count. And then that's why we approve it in October when the student count is known, and that's when we will have the annual meeting. So we're still in a waiting game, but behind the scenes, we're still doing the work that we need to do. The state has not given us much direction as of right now. So that's where the 21-22 budget is. If you have questions on that, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll move on to the ESSER dollars.
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. The ESSER dollars or the CARES dollars, they're the same funding. As you know, and we've been reporting it out at the board meetings, how much money we have spent related to COVID expenses. So the first round of ESSER dollars or CARES dollars, the district got about $75,000, and that's based on the Title I allocation. So the higher poverty districts got more money, the lower poverty districts got less money. And based on the Title I funding formula, we had to give a portion of our dollars, just like we do with our title dollars, to the parochial schools. So we did that, so we netted about $70,000. We've spent about $455,000. We're still in the business office, as you'll see tonight at the board meeting. We're still going through some of our purchases and trying to move them over to COVID if they didn't tell us while they were purchasing them. So you'll see some of the money going up and down. So we spent about $455,000 of ESSER dollars so far. The federal government's telling the state that they're going to continue to keep funding that, which is great news. But we don't know how much. So they're saying there's going to be another round of ESSER $2 coming. They haven't completely decided on how the funding's going to go, what the guidelines are going to be, and how it's going to distribute. We don't think it's going to be based on the Title I allocation. Again, it's going to be based on if you were in school, if you were virtual, those type of things. But we don't know how we can spend it. ESSER $1 had certain categories that you could spend in. We don't know if ESSER $2 are going to have the same categories or if it's going to be a little more open. So we are trying to figure out areas that we could spend those dollars in the future. So we are making lists in the business office of areas that we could fund it based on if it's going to be more towards Title I allocation or more towards like more open guidelines of spending. So we're doing it, so we'll be ready when they give us our number. They're saying that they're going to give us our number and the application's going to open at the end of April. So we will be prepared to submit our information at that time. They are saying they think that the ESSER $2, you're going to be able to go back to March of 2020 spending all the way through September of 2023. So we don't have to combine it. It will be for an extended period of time, so it will give us time for planning. But the ESSER $1 have been claimed, we've received the money, and obviously we have spent those dollars. So as ESSER 2 comes out and we know more information, I will come to the committee and give more information on where we're going to spend those dollars. But we're still tracking them on the list that the board sees. And then if, depending on the timeline they give us, we might be able to add some more earlier expenses, because the one the board sees is from July 1st of this year. So we will look at previous expenditures and future expenditures depending on what they tell us we can do with those dollars. Questions on ESSER or CARE funding.
I can't think of any. Don?
Nothing for me.
Amanda?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Brittany. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8, reports. A, Village of Germantown TIF/D Tax Incremental Finance District Property Update. Steve Kreklau. And it's okay to take your mask off. I think your voice will come through much more clearly if you do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for the invitation to appear before you this evening to provide with an update on tax increment financing at the village, and in particular, a proposed amendment to the project plan for TID 7. And let me begin with a little bit of background on TID 7 itself. TID 7 was established in 2017 related to an expansion of JW Speakers facilities out off of Freistadt Road. TID 7 was established, the borders roughly go on the south from Freistadt Road, on the east to the JW Speaker property line, on the west to Goldendale Road, and on the north to the railroad tracks, if you're familiar with that area, that run from the southeast to the northwest. That was adopted in 2017. JW Speaker has completed a portion of the construction that they had planned on at this point. However, there have been delays in phase 2 and phase 3 of their construction project. Late this summer, we were approached by another developer, Capstone Quadrangle. If you're not familiar with them, they have done other projects locally. Probably the most notable is the Amazon distribution facility in Oak Creek. They are a multi-state company with a variety of projects in other parts of the Midwest and Great Plains states as well. Their proposal to the village was based upon a parcel that they had purchased off of Holy Hill Road. It's directly across Holy Hill Road from the Briggs and Stratton building. You probably, if you're familiar with that area, saw the for sale sign that was up there, an older semi-abandoned farmhouse and some outbuildings that were in that area. They were proposing a preliminary site plan with 3 manufacturing or shipping and distribution facilities, each one of a little over 200,000 square feet, about 700,000 square feet in total. And they did request some village assistance through tax increment district funding for some of the site preparation costs, about $2.5 million worth of assistance with those types of expenses. We presented this to the village board in December of 2020 and looked at several options for how to provide tax increment district funding if that ends up being the option that's selected. We looked at amending Tax Increment District 8, which is to the north of Holy Hill Road and includes the Briggs and Stratton building. We looked at creating a separate independent Tax Increment District 9 that was solely based on this development. And then finally, and the proposal that you have before you here this evening was to amend Tax Increment District 7. And on the map that's on the screen right now, you can see that proposed amendment. Parcels 11 and 12 are owned by JW Speaker and are the original parcels included in Tax Increment District 7. The what is that, crosshatched? Is that the great term? Parcels 8, 9, 3, 4, and 5 to the northeast are the parcels that are proposed for inclusion in an amended version of TID 7. The parcel 3 is where the development is proposed by Capstone Quadrangle. The reason why several of these other parcels are included is that state statute requires that tax increment districts parcels are all contiguous. They have to be adjoining one another. So in order to include parcel 3, we also had to include 8 and 9. There's a very small parcel there, 7, that's wedged in between those two, as well as 4 and 5. And 1, which is the railroad tracks that run through that area. So all of those have to be included in order to extend the tax increment district to parcel 3, although there's no current plans for development on any of those parcels at this time. I'll move on then to, actually, if we're able, if we could move on to page 20, that shows the project plan along with the budget that's being proposed for the amendment. There you go. You can see there's some roadway improvements, stormwater ponds, a monument sign, demolition and environmental cleanup of some existing buildings, along with engineering and design fees and some administrative costs. I should point out that at the village board meeting last week, they did add a line item to this estimated project list of $700,000 for a recreational trail that would follow along the railroad tracks from the J.W. Speaker property up to, we're working on the final plans, either connecting up to Holy Hill Road on the north, or we have some long-term plans for a frontage road along Highway 41, and it could potentially connect eventually to that frontage road. So it is part of a plan for expanded recreational trail system that our Parks Department has been working on, and would fit in nicely with that plan if we're able to make that happen. The next item I was hoping to cover is on page 22 of the report that you have. This is a little smaller, so I'm going to have to put my glasses on to be able to read it. And this is a listing of the tax increment and development assumptions on page 22 of the report. There are several columns here, starting on the far left with construction year. Shaded in is a column for actual construction expenses, which shows the construction that J.W. Speaker has already completed. The next column to the right is the Capstone Business Park, which shows their 3 buildings. Yep, actually, it was the one right above there. Yeah. It shows the 3 buildings along with the timetable that they're proposing for construction. The first building they expect to have completed in 2022 at a value of roughly $14.5 million, with subsequent buildings in 2024 and 2027 with values in the low 20s. You can also see that J.W. Speaker still does plan to complete some expansion on their facilities of about $5 million in value at 2024. The total increment from this district, or the total additional property value added from this tax increment district, would be about $71.1 million, a number you see in the lower left-hand corner of this table. So then moving ahead.
Hey, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Just a quick question for you. Is that item on line 5 there, is that the Amazon, one of the Amazon warehouses, or what is that? The 14 million number? No, actually that, and the Amazon warehouse I referenced was the facility Capstone built in Oak Creek. These are 2 buildings. The tenants have not yet been identified, but that would be those would be 3 buildings that would be located within their development. Each one, the smallest would be the first building, which I believe would be a little bit under $200,000, valued at an estimated $14.5 million, followed by 2 additional buildings
ranging between 200 and 250,000 square feet and valued in the low 20s. But the tenants have not been identified at this point. Yeah, and please do, if you do have any other questions as I go through, please do interject. The next item that I'd like to walk through briefly, and I really need my glasses for this one, is page 26. It's a projected cash flow chart. And this is important because I think of the far right, and here it's projecting sideways, but if you're able on your screens to see this a little bit better, the balances, there's 3 columns it's on the top on the screen here, but it would be on the right if you're holding the report in a landscape perspective. But it shows the balances and the principal outstanding. And I think of most interest to the school board would be that the estimated closeout in the initial report was 2030, that the increment would generate enough revenue to cover all expenses and debt service by the year 2030, in which the district could be closed. The addition by the village board of the recreational trail of $700,000 would add 1 year to the projected closeout date, so it would make it 2031. And at that point, the district would be closed, much like we did Tax Increment District 4 about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and that property value would be returned to the tax base. So in today's dollars, about $71.1 million would be added to the general tax base at that point. So, which is about half of the time that legally is available for tax increment districts. We would have 22 years to close the district if there were more expenses or more debt that was associated with it. So the village board, the direction they've given to staff and to the consultants we're working with is to be conservative with the expenses and close the district as quickly as possible to get that property value onto the property tax base. So there is some additional information in the report you have before you. I thought those were the key points that I wanted to walk through with you this evening. Happy to answer any questions that you have or touch base on any other information that's in the report if you'd like additional clarification on it.
Yeah, just a clarification. So is the amended date 2030, or was that the original date?
That is the amended date. It actually moves the close date up. I believe, and I don't have the original plan in front of me, but I believe that the original date was 2033. Okay. And I could check that and send an email to confirm
That's fine. It's just good to hear that it would come online sooner.
Yeah. This is a significant amount of additional value being added with those 3 buildings. So it would allow us to close it out much more quickly.
What is the feedback from the property owners in that area?
I would say, generally the folks in the area would prefer to see it remain more rural, more farm fields. It is an area, the parcels that we're talking about are areas that have been identified in the village's 2020 comprehensive land use plan that was adopted, I believe, 2004 as commercial and industrial. So it has been known for a long time that's the plan for that area. We are also working with our 2050 comprehensive plan. Actually, if you get done with your meeting tonight and you'd like to go a little bit longer, we are having a public input session online for that this evening. And we are trying to address some of the concerns of neighborhoods near there to transition from the heavier industrial type usage that we're seeing up along Holy Hill west of Goldendale into something that's a little bit more neighborhood friendly. So we are trying to address some of those concerns. It's also, quite honestly, one of the reasons that the recreational trail was added. That would provide a benefit to some of the neighbors in the area that they could realize, in addition to kind of just the addition to the tax base, that there is an amenity that they could utilize.
So, Steve, we have some very savvy taxpayers in Germantown, and if we get pounded on TIF or TID are typically for dilapidated or rundown areas in the inner city somewhere, not greenfield sites like this. What do we tell them?
Well, TID was originally, as the state statutes were originally put in place, decades ago, was originally designed for brownfields, for dilapidated areas. Over the years, it's a little bit like an arms race. As other states expanded their TID law, and there are states that are much more aggressive with their use of tax increment districts than Wisconsin. For example, Wisconsin only allows TIDs, tax increment districts formed on property taxes. There are states that allow tax increment district using sales taxes, income taxes, other models. Wisconsin has expanded over the years the rules for when TIDs can be used, so that they can legally be used for in greenfields like we're seeing now. Our neighbors all up and down the interstate corridors do utilize tax increment districts, and developers do build that into their financial equations when they're setting these up. So, realistically, without using a tax increment district to some level, and I think this is one of the more conservative tax increment district proposals you'll see, using only about $2.5 million worth of project expenses to get $70 million in additional tax base. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I guess I hope that it provides the information that you're looking for. But to sum it up, I would say the use of tax increment districts has expanded as we try to keep up and be competitive, but we're trying to be very conservative with it and close the TIDs as quickly as possible to get the property value on the tax base.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to ask a semi-related question. What is the village doing to try and attract other businesses? We have a lot of retail space that's empty, and we see our neighbor, Menominee Falls, having a booming downtown with new businesses that are user-friendly, interactive with the community. It's nice that these would bring potential jobs, but what about things that are drawing our community together?
That's a great question. It's a real point of emphasis on the 2050 plan. And in specific, we're working to address both the Main Street area and the Mequon Road area to try to find ways to strengthen the restaurant, the entertainment, the retail businesses in those areas. One of the things that's somewhat challenging and that we need to work through as a community is that if you look at Menominee Falls, for example, and there are many others, Mayfair Collection down in Wauwatosa, Drexel Square down in Oak Creek, a lot of those successful models also include high-density residential development, which traditionally Germantown has been reluctant to allow a great deal of additional high-density residential development. But that does help. Having people in the vicinity of these businesses does help to support the businesses. So immediately what we're focusing on are trying to connect those businesses better with some of the existing population centers. We've been looking at expanding the trail system, trying to bring it closer to some of those business corridors. And then we'll also, we do on a regular basis get proposals from developers who are looking to put in some higher density residential. And I think that part of the conversation in that is that having those additional residents nearby businesses can help to support those businesses.
Is there any talk amongst the Planning Commission? Because we obviously had our own experience in the referendum construction, and I've seen other instances of businesses come before the Planning Commission, and they kind of put out the sign like we aren't open for business with some of the picky uni stuff that I can totally appreciate wanting to keep our community nice. But I think it seems as though there is no give and take, and which then does put up that sign that we aren't open for business.
That is a good point. It is something that's been talked about as part of the 2050 plan. I think, in my opinion, what I see that some of those conversations are difficult because we're working off of an outdated plan. So when a developer comes in, they don't necessarily know what the expectations are from the village before they start their way through the process. And that creates some of that difficulty at the Plan Commission. It creates some of the pushback from residents who are concerned about the type of development that they see coming in. So I believe that having a new 2050 plan that lays this out better and communicates it better, both to residents and to prospective businesses, will help with that. We always try to make sure that when we're working with businesses that we're communicating to them in a positive and professional way, even though at times those meetings do get a little bit heated. And you have residents who are very understandably concerned about how different developments are going to affect their quality of life.
Thanks.
Sure.
Tom?
I think that's a great topic when we do finally have the joint meeting with the village and the school district. Brittany, I don't know if this is a question for you, or maybe Steve would know. Did you replace Rick as our representative on the joint review board?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you. So kind of along the lines of Ms. Larson's beginning of her question, with the open spaces that there are around the community and other communities, how was the 10 years picked? I mean, if you have the capability of going out to 20 years, we have open spaces. You don't have tenants picked out quite yet. How was the 10 years? How'd you come up with the 10 years?
The 10 years was the minimum that we were able to cover the debt service with the known development. So if there is a development above and beyond what we have listed here, there is the possibility of closing early. But we don't like to show a TID closure date that's overly optimistic either. I think it's kind of a situation of under promise and over deliver. So that is if we do get additional development, we will close it early.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
All right, well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate your time.
Yep,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay. Let's see, next item is 8B, February variance report.
Sure. The February variance report goes through February 28th, 2021. To give a brief summary, unless you have specific questions, as of February 28th, I was going to say today, but as of February 28th, the general fund, we are spending about $800,000 less than we did previous year. And then the special education fund, it's about $265,000 less compared to the previous year, which is about a little over $1 million. We are tracking to spend less than last year at this time. Operating revenues, we spoke last month regarding the property taxes, but as of February 28th, this report states that our revenue is coming in less about 657,000 less in our general fund, but there was an increase of 550,000 over the previous year for special ed, and that is based on how fast we put our claims into the special ed. So maybe it's just timing, last year versus this year's, because the dollar amount should be pretty much the same. So we have a net decrease of a revenue of about $100,000, which I think is pretty close to compared to last year. And then finally, our fund balance. Our fund balance is basically the funding on the books, not necessarily the dollars in the bank. But as of right now, we have a positive fund balance of about $12.5 million. We are watching that, obviously. We still might have to go out for a short-term borrow in June just due to the actual fund balance at the end of the year might be low, depending on how our expenditures pan out. But right now, it's in a positive $12.5 million. If you have specific questions on the report, I can answer those as well.
I don't have any myself. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Brittany, and I'll take another motion.
Move adjourn.
Second.
Adjourned by Tom, motion by Tom, second by Sarah. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:58.